They called her a liar. They said no young woman could earn a Medal of Honor, especially not one who walked with a limp and carried a silence heavier than her scars. And when the judge demanded she remove it in court, accusing her of wearing a decoration she didn't deserve, everyone laughed. Everyone, except the man who entered moments later. The room fell silent, backs straightened, and even the judge froze. Because the man who arrived was an admiral, and he knew the truth she had spent years hiding. What happened next would shake the entire courtroom, and reveal the courage she never wanted acknowledged. The morning sun crept through the dusty windows of the county courthouse as Elena Rose Carter, a quiet 24-year-old Navy veteran, sat alone at the back bench, her hands tightly gripping the edges of her jacket. She wasn't there to fight for glory, fame, or even to protect her name, she was simply there because she had been ordered to appear. The world never knew her story. Even the neighbors who saw her every day only knew the silent girl with the limp, the one who avoided eye contact, the one who wore a silver Medal of Honor tucked beneath her shirt as if she were ashamed of it. And perhaps she was. Elena had never wanted attention. She had never wanted to be labeled a hero. To her, the medal reminded her of the night she wished she had been faster, stronger, better. But fate had carved her courage into history, even if she refused to accept it. And yet today, for the first time, the medal hung visibly around her neck, not by choice, but because she had forgotten to tuck it in before rushing out after receiving the court notice. People stared. Whispered. Some snickered. A few recorded her on their phones. A bailiff walked over to her, his tone dismissive. "Ma'am, you can't wear costume medals in a federal building. You'll need to remove that." Elena didn't raise her head. "It's not a costume." He rolled his eyes and walked away without bothering to check. Across the room, a row of young cadets from the local academy pointed at her, half mocking, half confused. "Bro, she's like, what? 20-something? No way she earned that. She probably bought it online. Who even wears fake medals to court?" Their laughter stung, but Elena remained still, her breathing quiet and controlled. She had survived worse. Much worse. When her case was called, something as small as a housing dispute, she stood slowly and walked forward. But the moment the judge saw the medal, everything changed. He leaned forward, raised an eyebrow, and asked, almost accusingly, "Miss Carter, where did you get that?" Elena froze. The murmurs around the room grew louder. The judge's voice hardened. "You will remove that medal immediately. This courtroom does not tolerate impersonation of military honors." Her lips trembled, but she managed to whisper. "I'm not impersonating anyone." The judge slammed his gavel. "Take it off. Now." The whole room erupted, whispers, laughter, scoffs, disbelief. And then, the doors at the back opened. A tall man in full Navy dress uniform stepped in, the weight of authority radiating from his every step. His chest carried rows of ribbons that silenced even the boldest snickers. It wasn't the uniform that muted the room, it was the rank. An admiral. And the moment his eyes met Elena's, she looked away, as if embarrassed. Because she knew him. And he knew the truth the world didn't. Every step the admiral took echoed through the courtroom like a warning. Officers, lawyers, bailiffs, everyone instinctively stood taller, unsure whether to salute or bow their heads. Judge Halburn blinked in confusion, his authority slipping with every stride of the man approaching the front. The admiral paused behind Elena. His voice was firm, refined, and carried years of command. "Judge Halburn, before you proceed, I believe you owe Miss Carter an apology." The courtroom froze. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She had not seen Admiral James Rourke in nearly 2 years, not since the night helicopters hovered above a burning warship, not since the rescue mission she wished she could forget. The judge stiffened. "And who might you be to interrupt my court?" Rourke stepped forward, placing a file on the judge's bench. "I am Admiral James Rourke, Commanding Officer of Naval Special Operations, United States Navy." And that, he pointed to Elena's medal. Is not a costume. It was awarded under my command. Gasps rippled across the room. The cadets who had mocked her earlier shrank into their seats, their faces pale. Elena wished she could disappear. Rourke continued, his tone sharp enough to cut the air. Miss Carter is one of the youngest recipients of the Medal of Honor in modern naval history. She earned it at the cost of her blood, her teammates, and her peace. Elena flinched at the last word. The judge swallowed, now visibly nervous. I wasn't informed. You didn't ask, the Admiral replied, his stare unblinking. Rourke stepped back and looked at Elena. It wasn't a proud look. It wasn't even relieved. It was the look of a man who knew exactly what she had carried, and how heavy it had grown. Miss Carter, he said softly, almost kindly now, I know you don't want this recognition. But I could not allow anyone to insult your service, especially not in a court of law. Elena felt every eye in the courtroom on her. Memories rushed back, fires, screams, metal tearing, the smell of smoke, the faces she couldn't save. The metal felt heavier around her neck. I don't want trouble, she whispered. Rourke's expression softened. You never wanted honor. You just wanted to help. And that is exactly why you deserve it. The judge cleared his throat, visibly embarrassed. Miss Carter. I apologize. But Elena didn't respond. She stared at the floor, fighting the tremor in her hands. Rourke placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You faced death without hesitation, Elena. You don't need to hide anymore. She shook her head, voice cracking. I'm not hiding. I'm trying to forget. The Admiral sighed, a deep, pained sound that hinted at the truth. He knew exactly what she was trying to forget. And he knew the world would soon find out. The courtroom had calmed, but inside Elena's mind, a storm raged. The Admiral's presence, the whispers, the apology, they had all brought back the night she spent years burying. She wanted to run, to disappear, to return to the small, quiet life she had built away from cameras and commanders. But memories, once awakened, refused to fall back asleep. Judge Halburn, trying to regain dignity, cleared his throat. Miss Carter, would you like to explain your service record for clarity? Elena shook her head immediately. No. I don't want to talk about it. But the Admiral stepped forward. Then allow me. No, she whispered sharply, eyes flashing with pain. For a moment, the Admiral hesitated, because he recognized that look. The look of a soldier who had survived something she didn't want spoken aloud. He lowered his voice. Elena, you're still fighting that night. Let me help you. The room held its breath as Admiral Rourke began recounting what Elena had never told anyone, not even her family. 2 years ago, Elena had been a communication specialist aboard the USS Horizon, never meant to be anywhere near the front lines. But when an explosion ripped through the ship during a covert rescue operation, chaos took over. Smoke blinded the corridors, metal screeched, alarms wailed. Most froze. Some fled. But not Elena. Despite being the youngest, she sprinted toward the firestorm, dragging wounded officers through collapsed passageways, even after shrapnel tore through her leg. When the blast doors jammed, she forced them open with her bare hands until her arms bled. When the guidance system failed, she manually rerouted communications, allowing the extraction team to escape. And when the final explosion hit the lower deck, she shielded 2 Marines with her own body, saving their lives. By the time we reached her, Admiral Rourke said quietly, she was lying unconscious, still holding onto the arm of a Marine she refused to let die. Silence fell heavier than the walls around them. The cadets who mocked her earlier stared at the floor, ashamed. But Elena didn't feel pride. She felt the familiar ache in her chest, the names of those she couldn't save echoing through her. The Admiral placed a hand on the witness stand. She didn't earn that medal, she lived it. Elena looked down, tears slipping onto her fingers. Because everything he said was true. And everything he left out hurt even more. When the hearing adjourned for a short break, Elena walked out of the courtroom, her steps unsteady. She needed air, space, anything to escape the crushing weight of her past. She reached a quiet hallway, leaning against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. But her hands shook uncontrollably. The metal felt like a chain around her neck, pulling her back into the flames she thought she had left behind. Admiral Rourke approached at a respectful distance. "Elena, talk to me." She wiped her eyes quickly. "Why are you here?" "Why now?" "Because I received notice you were summoned to court," he replied. "And because I know how you react to confrontation. I couldn't let you face that alone." "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "I don't want attention. I don't want people looking at me like I'm some legend." Rourke softened. "They're not looking at a legend. They're looking at a survivor. I don't feel like one." The Admiral exhaled slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. "You've spent 2 years punishing yourself for things you couldn't control. You saved lives that night. But you also lost people. We all did." Elena's voice cracked. "I hear them every night. I see them. And if I talk about what happened, it feels like I'm pretending it didn't hurt." Rourke nodded. "It hurt all of us. But you carry the guilt alone." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Elena whispered. "I didn't want the medal. I didn't want the ceremony. I didn't want to be remembered. I wanted to forget." "And that's exactly why you deserved it," Rourke replied. "Real heroes never ask for medals." Elena looked up at him, tears drying on her cheeks. "I'm tired, Admiral. Tired of pretending I'm okay." "For the first time," he said gently, "you don't have to pretend." When they returned to the courtroom, everyone stood as the Admiral entered again, a reflex of respect. Elena wished they wouldn't. It made her feel even smaller. The judge cleared his throat nervously. "We will continue the hearing. Miss Carter, you are not required to testify about your service." But a surprising thing happened. Elena stepped forward on her own. Her voice trembled at first. "I never wanted anyone to know what happened that night. Not because I'm ashamed of helping my team, but because I couldn't save everyone." A few cadets lifted their heads, their expressions softening. She continued. "We were a family on that ship. Every loss feels like losing a part of myself. And every time someone calls me a hero, all I can think about are the faces I couldn't bring back." Her hands twisted together, trembling. "But wearing this medal, even if it hurts, reminds me that their sacrifice mattered. That they weren't forgotten." The courtroom remained silent as she wiped a tear from her chin. "If this medal dishonors anyone, it's me, because I didn't want to accept their bravery. But Admiral Rourke once told me something after the ceremony." She looked at the Admiral. "You said, courage isn't not feeling fear. It's feeling fear and acting anyway." He nodded, eyes glistening slightly. "So if keeping this medal means keeping their memory alive, then I won't hide it again." Every person in the courtroom felt those words like a punch to the chest. Even Judge Halburn looked moved. "Miss Carter, thank you. And again, I deeply apologize for doubting your service." Elena bowed her head. "I accept." But what happened next would change everything. As the hearing ended, people approached Elena quietly, apologizing, thanking her, some simply offering a respectful nod. The cadets who had mocked her earlier stood in a line, each one saluting her in silence. She felt uncomfortable, but for the first time, not alone. Outside the courthouse, the sun was beginning to set, painting warm colors across the sky. It reminded Elena of the ocean horizon, the last thing she saw before the fire consumed the ship. Admiral Rourke walked beside her. "You handled that with more courage than most soldiers show in a lifetime." "I almost ran away," she admitted. "But you didn't." Elena looked at the medal resting against her chest. The weight felt different now. Not lighter, but no longer unbearable. "Admiral," she asked softly, "Why did you fight so hard for me? I was just a junior specialist." "You weren't just anything," he said. "You were the reason half our team survived. And more importantly, you remind us what real honor looks like." She breathed deeply, letting the evening breeze calm her. "For 2 years," she whispered, "I thought I was broken." Rourke shook his head. "You're not broken, Elena. You're forged. Stronger because you've walked through fire." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then, the Admiral extended his hand. "Let me walk with you. Not as your commanding officer, but as someone who believes in you." Elena hesitated, then placed her hand in his. For the first time, she felt the world ease around her. She wasn't just a survivor. She wasn't a mistake. She wasn't a burden. She was the reason others lived. She was the reason the Admiral stood proudly at her side. She was the hero she never wanted to be, but finally accepted she was. As they walked away from the courthouse, the last rays of sunlight glinting off her Medal of Honor, Elena realized something she had waited years to feel. Peace. And for the first time since that night, she let herself smile.